911 Rennsport, possibly the most iconic pairing in the entire Porsche lexicon. We've got over half a century now of race-derived technology shoehorned into the back of roadworthy 911s. But whilst the 911 RS is an ultra desirable product, there are some models that are more overlooked than others within that realm currently, thus being the 997 Gen 1 and Gen 2 GT3 RS. In today's video, we're going to look at why I think those cars are more overlooked than other RS products at present, and why I think we're all making a big mistake to overlook them. Don't we just love a 911 Rennsport? Really, the Gen 1 and Gen 2 997 GT3 RS sit in my book along with the 996 GT3 RS as that modern classic Rennsport. They don't carry any of the innovative new tech of the 991 and 992 RSs, so PDK, rear axle steering, electrically assisted steering, active aerodynamics. But then they're also not a classic RS in the way an air-cooled Rennsport is. Cars that are seen as rarefied classics rather than anything that you're going to take to a track. So those three cars, 996, 997.1 and 997.2 RS, as I said, are in this weird area of being a modern classic RS. And as regular viewers of this channel will know, I've banged on for years at how damn excellent the 996 GT3 RS, heinously undervalued for such a long time. People are now waking up to those cars, and they have risen in value over the last 5, 6, 7 years, and they definitely will continue to do so. And in fact, the 996 RS has already overtaken this car in values, really, the 997.1 GT3 RS. And that got me thinking, something isn't right there, because yes, the 996 RS is rarer, but the fact is the 997 GT3 RS in 3.6 litre fashion is a better 911 pretty much every way. Now the irony here is, I've banged on about these 996 RSs for years, and their values have accelerated to the point where I've kind of realised I'll never own one. So if I was smart, I would therefore be keeping a secret like this car to myself, but I'm not going to do that. It's all about you, dear viewer. So I am going to tell you why this car is a brilliant Rennsport. I think part of the reason this car is undervalued is because, on paper at least, well, it looks pretty much the same spec-wise as the 997.1 GT3. Same 3.6 litre Metzger engine motor, developing 415 horsepower, only a tenth quicker to 62 mile an hour, and again a similar top speed. In fact, even weight between the two, and an RS has always been a lightweight special, there's only 20 kilos difference between the 997.1 GT3 and GT3 RS. And that did irk enthusiasts of the Rennsport that were now buying a GT3 RS that had even an enamel badge on the front rather than a sticker. But as we all know, and as all proper enthusiasts know, there's far more to these 911s than just what's written down on the spec sheet. And really, the 997.1 GT3 RS was a big jump on over the GT3. For starters, the GT3 RS adopted the wider body shell, the C4 shell. That's 44mm wider across the rear over the narrow body GT3. Now that was crucial because it allowed for a wider rear track over the 997 GT3, The wheel's now spaced out by an additional 34mm. The wheelbase was actually slightly different as well. It's an extra 5mm longer on the RS over the GT3, and that's down to new wheel carriers taken from the GT3 RS race car, the homologation version, along with split wishbones, also taken from the bona fide GT3 RS race car. The other thing was aerodynamics. They were vastly improved on the RS over the GT3. And according to a fantastic online article from Excellence magazine, this was the first GT3 RS to develop a meaningful amount of downforce, 80 pounds at 186 mile an hour. But honestly, it really doesn't stop there. The RS got a shorter ratio gearbox, a single mass flywheel, both of which means that this car revs so freely. So in terms of tech and spec, absolutely no question, this is not just a GT3 with 20 kilos of weight saved. The other thing is numbers. These cars are so rare, particularly when you compare them to 991.1 RSs. There are many reasons as to why these cars are great. Again, just improved dynamically over any of the Rennsports before it, but really still sitting in that sweet spot for engagement. You know, manual, iconic Metzger engine, and a car that just talks to you, even just driving on the public road. Yes, you've got a PASM and a sport button and traction control. It's kind of the extent of the nannying technology on these cars. It's just all down to you otherwise, and it still delivers in the most scintillating Rennsport way. I think before we jump into the Gen 2, it's probably worth discussing why we think both of these cars are overlooked, because that might sound strange to some, but really the reason I'm saying that is within the realm again of GT products, the last couple of years have offered different fortunes to different models. For example, 996 Gen 1 GT3, whilst they've appreciated slightly in value, they're now a scarce car. It's very rare they come up on the marketplace. There used to be lots of them, now there's not. As I've mentioned on previous videos, a big part of that is the fact that those cars can now get into the US, so they now appeal to US collectors. They weren't from the off given to the United States of America. These cars, on the other hand, were. As a knock-on effect of that, people have also realised how good the Gen 2 996 is, because again, it's the last GT product without any driver aids or significant nannying tech. This generation of GT product just tends to hang around a little bit longer at the moment. And again, I have witnessed that with cars on the 9works marketplace. And that really is a litmus test, isn't it, in terms of popularity, desirability, and ultimately current market trends. And I think that's a real anomaly because, as we're discovering, they are outstanding GT3 RSs. And for me, probably where it's at.
These 997 GT3 RSs may look similar at face value, but there were a host of changes from Gen 1 to Gen 2, aside from the obvious upgrades such as LED lights front and rear. The Gen 2 retained the iconic Metzger flat 6 with capacity increase from 3.6 to 3.8 litres and a slightly higher redline at 8.5 grand, while power was upped from 415 to 450 horsepower. The 997.2 RS was the first water-cooled Rennsport to boast more power than its GT3 equivalent, the 15 horsepower difference coming thanks to a higher compression ratio and revised intake manifold. Though the Gen 2 is still based on a Carrera Force shell, detail changes include a wider track front and rear, helped by new 1-inch wide wheel arch extensions on the front. The Gen 2's wheels are lighter than the Gen 1, and they're also centre locking, bringing some more motorsport tech to the road. Perhaps most tellingly though, the 3.8 RS gets a new aerodynamic package, including a wider, lighter and taller rear wing, which contributes to 4 times more downforce than the Gen 1 RS and 70% more than the Gen 2 GT3. Wider rubber all-round boosts mechanical grip, and the Gen 2 is lighter overall by 5 kilos than the Gen 1. The 997.2 was also the first RS to use active engine mounts, and it also got its own bespoke PASM suspension, as well as a shorter ratio transmission compared to the GT3. That's the top level. Let's see what it's like on the road.
It's typical, isn't it, that it's raining when out in a pristine, low mileage 997.2 GT3 RS that's on Michelin Cup 2 tyres, semi-slicks if you're not in the know. It does mean I'm going to take it easy. I'm very respectful of the fact this car is not mine. It's a stunning example of the genre, and again, I'd quite like to keep it that way, maybe for you if you end up buying it. It's also worth pointing out, a bit of Nineworks TV behind the scenes, that some of this video was actually filmed a week ago. It was a heat wave. It was so hot my cameras stopped working. To be honest, I stopped working a little bit as well. I think I had a little bit of heat stroke. So I've came back for a second day to finish the film on these cars, and lo and behold, we've got rain. So that's why some of the B-roll is vastly different weather, but it's more for illustrative purposes than actual storytelling. So sitting behind the wheel, it's that usual lovely, timeless to be honest, 997 interior architecture. There's a couple of the usual changes that the 997 Gen 1 to Gen 2 era at large witnessed. For example, the PCM upgrade with the matte black finish to the fascia, the slightly larger wing mirrors as well. But otherwise, it's pretty similar to the Gen 1. We're in different seats now. These are folding buckets rather than the Carrera GT buckets in the Gen 1. But look, I've already gone through the spec of this, so it's time to explain really just why they're so awesome and how they drive on the road. Sound of it is awesome. That lovely deep Metzger bark penetrating through that Perspex rear screen and into the cabin. It is glorious. It's a very different sound, as we know, to the DFI engines that ended up in Porsche GT product after this car. But the Metzger engine, it's iconic. There's such longevity to its design. There's genuine motorsport integrity, a really lovely, crisp, free revving motor, unbelievable throttle response, a real shove of torque low down, and again, a real thrilling run to the red line, which was slightly increased over the Gen 1 here. It's now 8.5 grand rather than 8,400. So that iconic Metzger engine with race-proven pedigree is widely known to be bulletproof as well. Is mated to the most wonderful 6-speed, close ratio, short shift gearbox. In a world of hyperboles, it's really difficult to underclub, and I know Steve Cavalier, you're going to love that saying. It's really difficult to underclub just how brilliant this 6-speed is. Definitely one of the best of all time in a 911. Short, sharp, crisp, direct, lightweight with your arm, although the clutch is quite heavy. But, I mean, it really is the perfect ally to this Metzger Flat 6. What's great, just while we're stuck in traffic, and this is in reference to what I said earlier on with classic RSs, they're very difficult to drive at low speeds. They don't like it. By the time we got to the 997 generation, and this is what I'm talking about them being in a sweet spot, they have unbelievable performance pedigree, but actually for driving on the road in urban areas is not half as difficult. Yes, the damping is stiff, but it's not horrendous. The clutch is, yes, heavier than a Carrera, but getting that biting point isn't anywhere as headache prone as a 993 RS, for example. So really, we are in this lovely area of like brilliant performance, high engagement, and clear usability as well. And again, the other thing, and I'm not going to be demonstrating it today, but having done plenty of miles in these cars before, is the tweaked aerodynamics and increased downforce on this car really does have quite a dramatic effect over the Gen 1. At medium and high speeds, the car is so much more stable, so much more planted. The other good news is you can still drive these cars, Gen 1 and Gen 2, in the most traditional 911 way. And that is, with reference to circuit driving, steering the car with the gas pedal. I've seen 991 GT products on Porsche-only track days take a completely different line round a circuit to this older stuff. It really is such a significant leap on technologically and dynamically. But these are still quintessential classic 911. They've always been reliable, and they've always been high on engagement and entertainment. And that is why they're so damn awesome. The other thing is steering. I forgot to mention it on the Gen 1, but both of these cars over the 996, steering is a big improvement. The 996 RSs, and obviously it's geo-dependent, but the wheel really is fighting you all the way as it kind of tramlines and hunts for every nook and cranny in the road, whereas the 997 steering wonderfully feels really nicely weighted as well, and it's not pulling you all over the place either. Honestly, that throttle response is unbelievable, and again, you can feel where Gen 1 to Gen 2 things have improved. Cornering, again, like the pace that you can take corners is higher in the 3.8 over the 3.6. You can corner faster, you can corner flatter, and the car will stay nice and stable. So that's it then, that's the genius of the 997s, both rare, manual, Metzger engined. There's so much to love about these cars, and I just really hope that in time that will be realised, and again within the context of RSs, that will be realised within the wider realm of 911 Rennsports. Only 1,500 or so made of these, which basically means for every one 997 Gen 2 RS, there's 3 991.1 RSs. So rarity assured, on top of the engineering brilliance and high modern classic appeal that these cars already have. Let's return to base nice and safe. I want to say a big thanks to RPM Technic for allowing me a drive in these exquisite examples of the marque. Extremely low mileage, available via the RPM Technic website. Take a look for further details. They're also on the Nineworks marketplace, of course. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.